Imagine holding in your hand a coin worth just $1 at the time of its creation. Yet today, it could be worth more than a house, more than a car, more than a lifetime of ordinary wages. What if I told you that some of the rarest $1 coins in American history are not just metal, but treasures that carry hidden stories of power, politics, war, artistry, and survival? Each one whispers secrets of the past, from the earliest days of the Republic to the turbulent years of silver shortages and the bold experiments of the United States Mint. These coins were never meant to be forgotten, and yet they slipped into history, quietly waiting to be rediscovered by collectors and dreamers alike. In this journey, we will uncover the 5 rarest $1 coins ever made. Coins that have ignited bidding wars in auction houses, coins that vanished and reappeared like ghosts, and coins that turned ordinary people into millionaires overnight. If you stay with me, you will see how a simple piece of silver or copper became a living time capsule of America's past, and why these 5 $1 coins are not just money, they are legends. In the world of American coinage, few series command the respect and curiosity of collectors like the Eisenhower dollar, and within the short-lived yet historically rich series, 1 year stands out as a fascinating marker of transition and significance. That year is 1978, the final official circulation strike of the Eisenhower dollar before the series gave way to a new era with the smaller Susan B. Anthony dollar. To understand the 1978 Eisenhower dollar, we must go back to the origins of the coin itself. Created in 1971, following the death of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th President of the United States, and one of the most celebrated Allied commanders of World War II, Congress approved the issuance of a new dollar coin that would both honor Eisenhower and commemorate the Apollo 11 moon landing of 1969. The obverse of the coin bore the dignified profile of Eisenhower designed by chief engraver Frank Gasparo, while the reverse carried an image of an eagle landing on the moon clutching an olive branch adapted from the official Apollo 11 insignia. This dual symbolism connected American leadership on Earth with its triumphs in space, tying the nation's past victories to its technological future. The Eisenhower dollar was the first dollar coin struck by the United States Mint since the last peace dollars rolled out in 1935, and it was issued in 2 primary forms: circulation-clad copper-nickel coins for everyday commerce and special silver-clad issues primarily for collectors. From the beginning, the coin was controversial. While collectors appreciated its commemorative value and its link to Eisenhower and Apollo, the general public was less enthusiastic. The coin was physically large, heavy, and inconvenient for pocket use, measuring 38.1 millimeters in diameter and weighing over 22 grams. It never gained widespread acceptance in daily transactions, but it did gain a loyal following among numismatist casinos and the United States military, especially in overseas bases where Eisenhower dollars circulated more frequently than back home. By the time we arrive at 1978, the series was already nearing its end. After 7 years of production, the Eisenhower dollar had failed to achieve the circulation success the Mint and Treasury hoped for. Lawmakers began considering alternatives. A smaller dollar coin was seen as the answer, and the Susan B. Anthony dollar was authorized to replace the Eisenhower dollar, beginning in 1979, making 1978 the final year of circulation strikes for the series. This historical context gives the 1978 Eisenhower dollar special importance. It represents the closing chapter of a distinctive era in American coinage. To understand its production, we must look at the 3 mints that struck the coin: the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Philadelphia coins bore no mint mark. Denver coins carried a small D beneath Eisenhower's neck, while San Francisco struck both proof versions and uncirculated collector issues marked with an S. One of the intriguing aspects of the 1978 issue is the absence of silver collector issues, unlike the earlier years when the Mint produced 40% silver-clad Eisenhower dollars for collectors. The 1978 release was struck only in copper-nickel clad, eliminating silver from the program entirely. This signaled a shift away from precious metal coinage toward purely utilitarian issues with collector editions Reserved for proof finishes rather than intrinsic metal value. The design of the 1978 Eisenhower dollar remained the same as prior years. The Gasparro portrait of Eisenhower on the obverse and the Apollo 11 reverse with the eagle on the moon, however. Careful study of the dies reveals minor variations in detail die wear and strike sharpness, as these massive coins were difficult to strike with precision. Collectors often prize coins that display strong detail, particularly in Eisenhower's hair and the eagle's feathers over weak strikes, which are common. This makes condition a critical factor in the value of 1978 Eisenhower dollars and gives rise to the premium market for high-grade certified specimens in the realm of mint state grading. The 1978 issue presents challenges. Coins in lower grades from Ms. 60 to Ms. 64 are plentiful, but sharply struck examples in Ms. 65 and above become scarcer, especially with attractive luster and minimal marks. The size of the coin meant that bag marks were common as the heavy dollars clashed against each other in mint bags. Fewer survivors with pristine surfaces exist at the highest levels, making these pieces sought after by advanced Eisenhower dollar specialists. In proof issue struck at San Francisco, collectors look for mirrored fields and frosted cameo contrast on the designs. Deep cameo proofs with minimal haze or spotting command stronger premiums, as they represent the pinnacle of modern mint craftsmanship in terms of mintage. The 1978 Eisenhower dollar saw over 25 million coins struck at Philadelphia and more than 33 million at Denver, while San Francisco produced over 3 million proof issues. These numbers, while substantial, were lower than some earlier years, reflecting the gradual decline in demand for the large dollar coin, yet they were high enough that common circulated examples remain affordable to this day, making the 1978 Eisenhower dollar accessible to both beginning collectors and advanced specialists. What elevates the coin beyond its statistics is its place in history. It was the last Eisenhower dollar issued for circulation, the last large dollar coin of the 20th century, and a farewell to an era that connected America's military heroism with its space exploration triumphs. The Eisenhower series as a whole represents a fascinating chapter in United States numismatics, a coin that was never fully embraced by the public, yet became a favorite among certain niche groups and has since developed a strong following among modern coin collectors. The 1978 issue in particular encapsulates the transition from one design philosophy to another, closing the book on large, heavy circulating dollars and paving the way for smaller, more practical designs. Although the Susan B. Anthony dollar that followed in 1979 would face its own set of challenges, the Eisenhower dollar, especially the final year 1978 coins, hold a place of distinction today for collectors who appreciate both the artistry and the story behind their production. The 1978 Eisenhower dollar continues to be studied for its strike characteristics, die varieties, and grading challenges as specialists seek out top quality examples and varieties, such as doubled dies or unusual planchet errors. Error coins in this year, as in others, can command significant premiums among collectors, with dramatic examples such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die breaks, illustrating the mechanical realities of minting a coin of this size. While common examples in circulated condition may trade for little more than face value, these dramatic mint errors can elevate a 1978 Eisenhower dollar into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and eye appeal of the mistake. For collectors and historians alike, the 1978 Eisenhower dollar serves as both an end and a beginning. It marks the conclusion of America's last large dollar coin and the dawn of a new experiment. With the Susan B. Anthony series, it represents not only a numismatic collectible, but also a tangible reminder of a nation's shifting needs in coinage, commerce, and commemoration. Its story brings together the legacy of Dwight D. Eisenhower, the triumph of Apollo 11, the artistry of Frank Gasparro, and the evolving landscape of American money. This blend of history, artistry, and cultural meaning is what makes the 1978 Eisenhower dollar a coin worthy of deep study and lasting appreciation. And in exploring its origins, its production, its varieties, its challenges, and its legacy, we uncover a narrative that can easily sustain hours of discussion for both seasoned collectors and those just beginning to discover the remarkable world of rare coins. In the vast history of American coinage, few coins spark as much curiosity as the $1 coin minted in 1974, a piece that stands at the crossroads of tradition, innovation, and cultural memory. When you hold a 1974 Eisenhower dollar in your hand, you are not simply holding a coin, you are holding a piece of the American journey, a reminder of the nation's attempts to honor leadership, adapt to economic change, and respond to shifting public attitudes toward the very idea of using dollar coins in everyday life. To understand why this particular coin is so fascinating, we must step back to the early 1970s, when the United States was coming out of the turbulent years of the 1960s, a period defined by war, social upheaval, and technological triumph. Most notably, the Apollo moon landing in 1969. President Dwight D. Eisenhower had passed away in March 1969, and the nation sought a way to honor him as both a military leader who helped win World War II and as the 34th president who presided over years of post-war prosperity. The decision was made to create a new dollar coin that would bear his likeness, a return to large-format dollar coinage not seen since the Peace Dollar series ended in 1935. By 1971, the Eisenhower dollar had been introduced, and by 1974, it was already in full production. Yet its story was not a simple one, for while the Eisenhower dollar carried immense symbolic weight, it also carried practical challenges. The coin was large, heavy, and inconvenient for everyday use, and yet it became a centerpiece for collectors, as well as a token of pride for Americans who connected its imagery to the space race. The reverse design, crafted by Frank Gasparo, depicted the Apollo 11 insignia with an eagle landing on the moon, a tribute to the achievement that had captivated the world, and the obverse showcased Eisenhower himself, a stern, determined face symbolizing both his military and presidential legacy. The year 1974 is especially interesting in the Eisenhower series because it represents the last full year of circulation strikes before major changes would come in 1975 and 1976. With the introduction of the bicentennial design, the 1974 Eisenhower dollar was struck in both copper nickel clad for circulation and in silver clad for collectors through special mint offerings at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint produced coins with subtle differences, giving rise to varieties and mintmark distinctions that continue to engage collectors. To truly appreciate the 1974 Eisenhower dollar, one must understand the economic backdrop of the time. Inflation was on the rise. The United States had just moved off the gold standard under President Nixon, and Americans were grappling with the new realities of global finance. While the dollar coin itself had no silver content in circulation, strikes the United States Mint offered special collector versions in 40% silver, a gesture toward numismatists who lamented the end of silver coinage just a decade earlier. In 1965, these silver-clad Ikes became prized not only for their beauty, but for their role in maintaining a link between the older tradition of silver dollars and the modern era of base metal coinage. Collectors often discuss the strike quality of the 1974 dollars, as the large planchets made consistent sharp details difficult to achieve. Weak strikes, particularly on Eisenhower's cheek and on the eagle's feathers on the reverse, are common, which means that finding a sharply struck example in high grade is always a challenge. Furthermore, because the coin saw limited circulation compared to smaller denominations, many examples survived in decent condition. Yet pristine gem specimens, especially from the Denver Mint, remain more elusive. Another fascinating aspect of the 1974 issue lies in its proof coins struck at San Francisco. The 1974 S-proof Eisenhower dollars were carefully crafted using polished dies and special planchets, giving them a mirror-like finish that contrasted beautifully with frosted design elements. These proofs appealed to collectors who wanted a higher quality version of the coin, and they provide a window into the Mint's ongoing effort to balance mass production with the artistry of coin design. But beyond the technical details, the Eisenhower dollar of 1974 tells us much about the cultural mood of America in that era. This was a nation looking backward with nostalgia to the heroism of World War II and the steady leadership of Eisenhower, while simultaneously looking forward to the challenges of the Cold War and the achievements of space exploration. The coin became both a memorial and a celebration, embodying the dual identity of the United States as a land of tradition and progress. In building a 2-hour exploration of this coin, one can dive into several layers: the biography of Eisenhower himself, from his days at West Point to his command on D-Day and his presidency that saw the creation of the interstate highway system, the design process of the coin, and Frank Gasparo's vision for capturing both Ike's likeness and the national pride of the moon landing, the minting technology of the 1970s, and how the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco facilities each left their mark on the coinage, the economic realities of inflation and the end of silver coinage, and finally the role of collectors in preserving and valuing these coins over the decade. Stories of rare varieties and error coins also pepper the history of the 1974 Eisenhower dollar. Certain double die obverses and unusual planchet errors have been reported, adding an element of treasure hunting to the collecting experience. These anomalies serve as reminders that even in an age of mass production, the human and mechanical processes of coin-making could produce surprises that thrill collectors and historians. To fully understand the 1974 dollar, one must also place it in the longer continuum of American dollar coins, from the flowing hair dollar of 1794 to the Morgan and Peace dollars of the 19th and early 20th centuries, and onward to the smaller Susan B. Anthony dollars, introduced just a few years later in 1979. Each coin reflects the values, technologies, and aspirations of its age, and the Eisenhower dollar sits firmly in the middle of this legacy, large in size, heavy in hand, carrying the weight of both memory and ambition. This, when you look closely at the 1974 Eisenhower dollar, you are not just examining a coin. You are stepping into the story of a nation at a turning point. You are seeing how Americans chose to remember a general who became a president, how they celebrated their triumph in space, and how they adapted to a changing economy and a changing world. For collectors today, these coins are more than metal. They are keys to the past, links to the stories of people and events that shaped modern America. And for anyone willing to listen, the 1974 dollar has much to say about courage, leadership, and the enduring power of national symbols. In the vast history of American coinage, there are certain coins that stand out not only for their monetary value, but also for their place in the story of the United States, and the 1976 $1 coin, also known as the Eisenhower Bicentennial dollar, is one of those fascinating pieces that captures an entire nation's pride, spirit, and history within the metal of a single coin. To truly understand the importance of this coin, we must go back not only to the year it was struck, but also to the cultural and political atmosphere of the United States at the time, because this was not just another dollar issued by the United States Mint. It was a symbol of 200 years of American independence, a celebration of the bicentennial, and a continuation of the story of Dwight D. Eisenhower, the general who led Allied forces in Europe during World War II, and the president who guided America through the 1950s. In the early 1970s, America was preparing for its bicentennial, a massive celebration of 200 years since the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The nation was in the midst of both pride and turbulence. The Vietnam War had recently ended. Watergate had shaken trust in the presidency. And yet, there was a deep yearning to reconnect with American ideals. The US Mint, under the leadership of Director Mary Brooks, sought to mark this moment in history with special coinage, coins that would be different from the regular designs, coins that would be cherished as keepsakes of this once-in-a-lifetime national celebration. So in 1976, the United States issued a special $1 coin featuring President Dwight Eisenhower on the obverse, just as in earlier Eisenhower dollars, but the reverse was transformed. Instead of the traditional eagle landing on the moon design that had been introduced in 1971, the bicentennial dollar, featured a bold new reverse designed by Dennis R. Williams, a talented art student whose design was selected from a national competition. Williams depicted the Liberty Bell superimposed on the surface of the moon, symbolizing both American independence and America's achievement in space exploration. This was a design that perfectly captured both the nation's past and its future. The bicentennial dollar was struck in both clad copper nickel versions for circulation and special 40% silver versions for collectors. These silver versions were sold in 3 coin sets alongside the bicentennial quarter and half dollar, making them prized possessions for those who wanted a tangible link to the bicentennial celebration. The coins were minted at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with the San Francisco Mint producing the special proof and silver collector editions. And what makes the 1976 $1 coin even more interesting is that it was unique among Eisenhower dollars, because unlike other years, these bore a dual date, 1776-1976, reminding every American who held the coin of the nation's 200 years of history. Collectors often note the large size of the Eisenhower dollar. It was the last large-size $1 coin struck for circulation in the United States, and its sheer weight and presence made it a standout piece in pocket change. Though many Americans rarely saw them in daily transactions, the Eisenhower dollars tended to be used more often in casinos and for special occasions rather than in everyday commerce. But for collectors, the 1976 version was always something more. It was a patriotic symbol, a keepsake of a moment in time, and a piece of American art. And when we look deeper into the coin, we also uncover layers of history that extend far beyond 1976. For example, the decision to honor Eisenhower on the dollar came shortly after his death. In 1969, Congress authorized the new dollar to recognize both his presidency and his role as supreme commander during World War II. And the moon landing imagery on the regular Eisenhower dollar tied his legacy to the triumphs of the space race, which had just been won by America with Apollo 11. So when the bicentennial approached, the Mint's decision to pair Eisenhower's portrait with the Liberty Bell and the moon was not only symbolic, but almost poetic, combining America's revolutionary birth with its 20th century achievements. The story of the 1976 $1 coin also reveals the artistry behind coin design. For while many coins are created by master engravers at the Mint, the bicentennial reverse came from a young man, Dennis R. Williams, who at just 22 years old beat out professional artists and engravers to have his design immortalized in coinage. His Liberty Bell and Moon design remains one of the most iconic reverse images in modern US coin history. Today, numismatists examine the many varieties and strikes of the $1,976. There are differences in the clarity of the lettering and details, particularly between Type 1 and Type 2 issues. The Type 1 has bold, thick lettering with blockier letters, while the Type 2 features thinner, sharper lettering with greater detail. These subtle differences are crucial for collectors and can affect the coin's desirability and value. Furthermore, proof versions struck in San Francisco display mirror-like fields and frosted devices that make them especially beautiful under magnification. Silver-clad editions have a different feel and tone compared to the base metal issues, and these differences continue to fascinate collectors who study every nuance beyond the technical details. However, the coin carries an emotional weight for millions of Americans who lived through the bicentennial. In 1976, the country was covered in red, white, and blue parades, fireworks, patriotic television specials, and commemorative items filled the culture, and the bicentennial coins were perhaps the most enduring of these artifacts. They were placed into albums, saved in drawers, given as gifts, and handed to children as a way of connecting them to the nation's history over the decades. Since many of those coins have remained preserved and they continue to surface in collections today, holding one is like holding a small piece of 1976, a piece of the national spirit that year. And though the Eisenhower dollar was eventually replaced in 1979 with the smaller Susan B. Anthony dollar, The 1976 bicentennial issue remains one of the most iconic and beloved coins of the 20th century for collectors and historians alike. It represents not just a coin, but a story of a country celebrating its birth while also looking toward its future. And so the 1976 $1 Eisenhower bicentennial coin is more than metal. It is a monument in miniature, a story told in copper, nickel, and silver, a reminder of Eisenhower's leadership of America's independence, of the space race of the bicentennial, and of the enduring power of American ideals. And when you look at it closely, you are not simply looking at a coin, you are gazing into the story of America itself. 200 years of struggle, triumph, sacrifice, and hope, all engraved into a single piece that continues to live on in collections and in history to this day. Imagine holding in your hand a piece of American history, coin that does not just carry a face value of $1, but tells the story of an entire era. The year was 1972, a time of political upheaval, cultural shifts, and economic change. And in the midst of all this, the United States Mint struck a coin that has since captured the fascination of collectors, historians, and everyday Americans alike. The Eisenhower dollar, issued from 1971 to 1978, stands as a tribute to one of the most iconic figures of the 20th century, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme commander of the Allied forces in Europe during World War II, and later the 34th President of the United States. His leadership and influence were monumental, and when he passed away in 1969, Congress authorized a coin to honor his memory. What makes the 1972 Eisenhower dollar particularly fascinating is not just the portrait of Eisenhower designed by Frank Gasparo, but also the incredible historical backdrop of its production. This coin was the first dollar struck since the peace dollar ended in 1935. And it came at a time when America had not seen a circulating dollar coin in nearly 4 decades. This gap alone makes it a landmark issue. Yet, what elevates the 1972 dollar to legendary status are the stories behind its creation, its multiple varieties, its ties to space exploration, and the intricate details that continue to drive collectors into deep study and passionate debate. The obverse of the coin, Eisenhower's dignified profile faces, left a reminder of his steadfast service to the nation. On the reverse, we see an image directly inspired by the Apollo 11 mission patch, an eagle landing on the moon holding an olive branch in its talons. The symbolism here is extraordinary. This was not only a tribute to Eisenhower, but also to the triumph of American innovation and courage during the space race. Just a few years earlier, in 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot on the lunar surface, an achievement that echoed around the world. The 1972 Eisenhower dollar immortalized that moment in American coinage, linking one of the greatest leaders of the past with one of the greatest achievements of modern history. Now, when we dive into the year 1972 itself, we discover something even more fascinating. The Eisenhower dollar of that year comes with 3 distinct reverse design types. And these are not just minor differences, these are varieties that have become the stuff of numismatic legend. Collectors know them as Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3, and each variety carries its own rarity and story. The differences lie in the design details of the Earth and islands, as seen on the reverse above the eagle in Type 1. The islands of Cuba and Hispaniola appear indistinct and crude in Type 2. The Earth appears with much sharper lines, and the islands are better defined. But this variety was struck only at the Philadelphia Mint, and in very limited numbers, making it one of the rarest Eisenhower dollar varieties. And finally, in Type 3, the Earth and islands appear with even greater clarity, and this design carried forward in later years. It is the Type 2 that has gained special notoriety among collectors, because its low mintage and distribution mean that finding one in high grade is a remarkable accomplishment. And this has made the 1972 Type 2 Eisenhower dollar one of the most desirable coins of the entire series. The production challenges of these coins were significant. Striking large-clad dollar coins with intricate designs tested the capabilities of the mint. The Eisenhower dollar was made in both copper nickel-clad and in special silver-clad compositions struck for collectors at the San Francisco Mint. The copper nickel-clad coins were meant for circulation, but in reality many Americans disliked using dollar coins. They were too heavy, too large, and did not fit conveniently in wallets or cash registers. This lack of popularity meant that many $1,972 ended up sitting in bank vaults for years or being melted down in later decades. Yet for collectors, these very circumstances preserved many coins in uncirculated condition, allowing today's enthusiasts to study them with precision. If we step back and consider the historical context of the early 1970s, the Eisenhower dollar takes on even more meaning. The United States was grappling with the aftermath of the Vietnam War. The Watergate scandal was just beginning to stir inflation, and economic instability were reshaping the daily lives of Americans. Against this backdrop, the Eisenhower dollar served as a symbol of strength, continuity, and achievement. Eisenhower himself represented leadership, integrity, and victory in war, while the Apollo 11 motif reminded the public of American greatness in exploration and science. Owning and using these coins in 1972 was not merely about commerce, it was about identity and pride. When we analyze the values of these coins in today's collector market, we find even more reasons why the 1972 Eisenhower dollar deserves a place in history. Common Type 1 and Type 3 coins may trade for modest sums in circulated grades, but in pristine mint state conditions with high numerical grades from grading services, they can command significant premiums. The true star, however, remains the Type 2. Its scarcity ensures that collectors pay hundreds, and in some cases, even thousands of dollars for top-grade examples beyond market value. These coins spark conversation and study. Entire books and collector clubs are dedicated to the Eisenhower dollar series, and the 1972 issues in particular continue to inspire new generations of numismatists. But this is not only a story about rarity or market demand. This is a story about art, technology, and memory. The design choices, the minting difficulties, and the historical connections combined to make the 1972 Eisenhower dollar a miniature monument. Struck in metal coins like this are not just objects of trade, they are living witnesses to the times they were born. They carry the fingerprints of history, from the minting presses to the pockets of everyday Americans, and now to the displays of collectors and museums around the world. So, when you hold a 1972 Eisenhower dollar in your hand, you are holding more than a piece of metal. You are holding the memory of a great leader, the celebration of mankind's first steps on the moon, the economic struggles of a nation, and the artistry of engravers who sought to capture it all on a canvas barely larger than an inch and a half across. This is why the story of the 1972 dollar is not a short one. It is a saga that connects war and peace, exploration and innovation, rarity and value, and ultimately the enduring American spirit. And that is the journey we will dive into as we explore the full history, varieties, values, and hidden secrets of the 1972 Eisenhower dollar, a coin that deserves its place among the most fascinating issues in the entire history of United States coinage. In the world of American numismatics, there are few coins that capture the imagination of collectors and historians quite like the Eisenhower dollar, and among them, the 1971 $1 coin stands as a true beginning, a first chapter in a short but fascinating series that bridges the gap between the silver coinage era of the mid-20th century and the modern clad coinage that would dominate the second half of the century. When the United States Mint introduced the Eisenhower dollar in 1971, it was not simply the return of the dollar denomination to circulation. It was the birth of a coin that carried heavy symbolic weight, political significance, and historical resonance. It was the first circulating dollar struck by the U.S. Mint since the peace dollar of 1935, and it came at a time when the American public was still adjusting to major changes in coinage following the removal of silver from dimes and quarters in 1965, and from half dollars in 1970. The Eisenhower dollar was designed as a tribute to General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who had passed away in 1969. Eisenhower was not just the 34th President of the United States, but also the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe during World War II, a man whose leadership during the D-Day invasion and whose presidency in the 1950s left an indelible mark on American and world history. Congress quickly authorized a coin to honor him, and the mint responded with a bold large dollar coin that would feature his portrait on the obverse, designed by chief engraver Frank Gasparo, and an image on the reverse that carried even more symbolism. The reverse design was based on the Apollo 11 mission insignia, the bald eagle landing on the moon, clutching an olive branch of peace, a direct tribute to the moon landing of 1969, in which Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin honored Eisenhower's vision of American progress. The year 1971 was monumental because it marked the very first production of the Eisenhower dollar, and the coinage was split into two distinct types that carry significant weight in the collector market. There were circulation strikes produced in a copper nickel-clad composition, and there were special collector versions in a 40% silver-clad composition struck at the San Francisco Mint. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced the standard-clad coins intended for circulation, although in truth, these large dollars rarely circulated freely in commerce because of their size and weight. The San Francisco Mint struck proof and uncirculated silver-clad issues for collectors, and these became prized items from the moment of their release. Distinction between the clad circulation strikes and the silver collector issues makes the 1971 Eisenhower dollar one of the most studied and collected modern issues in American coinage history. The Philadelphia Mint produced no mintmark dollars in 1971, while Denver produced coins with the D mintmark and San Francisco produced coins with the S mintmark. The silver collector versions were available in both proof and uncirculated formats, and were often sold in special government packaging that highlighted their silver content and their historical importance. When examining the history of this coin, one must also consider the broader economic context in which it was struck. 1971 was the year that President Richard Nixon formally ended the Bretton Woods system and took the United States off the gold standard, effectively severing the dollar's last tie to precious metal backing. At the same time, the mint was issuing a new large dollar coin in a composition that reflected the move away from silver. The Eisenhower dollar then becomes not only a tribute to Eisenhower and Apollo 11, but also a symbol of the changing nature of American money itself. From silver-backed coinage to modern base metal coinage, collectors today pay great attention to the varieties and errors of the 1971 Eisenhower dollar. One of the most famous varieties is the 1971 D-friendly eagle reverse, a subtype of the Denver issue that features a modified eagle design on the reverse, where the eagle's breast appears more rounded and friendly, as opposed to the sharper stern eagle on most other issues. There are also major distinctions between the 1971 Philadelphia issues, because these were struck in a copper nickel-clad composition, and as the first year of issue quality control was inconsistent, creating numerous examples with weak strikes, planchet flaws, and die polishing lines. These coins today serve as a fascinating window into the mint struggles with the large copper nickel-clad coin that was difficult to strike. Sharp-light silver versions also carry their own distinctions. The 1971 S-proof silver Eisenhower dollar, with its mirrored fields and frosted devices, remains one of the most beautiful modern coins struck by the mint, while the 1971 S uncirculated silver issue, sometimes referred to as the blue Ike, because of the blue envelope in which it was packaged, has its own dedicated following. The silver coins weigh 24.59 grams compared to the 22.68 grams of the clad versions, and they contain approximately 0.3 of an ounce of silver, giving them intrinsic bullion value. In addition to their collector apple, assembling a complete set of 1971 Eisenhower dollars can itself be a rewarding challenge for collectors, because to do so requires securing examples from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco in both clad and silver compositions, and in both circulation and collector finishes. Understanding the subtleties of strike, luster, and toning is essential for the advanced collector, because many 1971 Eisenhower dollars, especially from Philadelphia, are notoriously difficult to find in true gem condition. The large open fields of the design make These coins prone to marks and scuffs and fully struck examples with sharp detail on Eisenhower's hair and the eagle's feathers are far scarcer than one might expect from a modern issue hat makes the 1971 Eisenhower dollar so powerful as a collectible is that it is not just a coin but a story in metal. It is the story of a nation honoring a military leader and president. It is the story of the space race immortalized in coinage. It is the story of a mint grappling with new technology and new compositions. And it is the story of money in America at a turning point in history. The coin may not have circulated widely like dimes, quarters, or nickels, but it has circulated widely in the hearts of collectors and historians who see in it a reflection of an America in transition from the beginning in 1971 through the end of the Eisenhower dollar series in 1978. This coin would lay the groundwork for the smaller Susan B. Anthony dollar that followed, but the first year of issue remains the foundation of the entire series. The 1971 Eisenhower dollar is therefore both a collectible artifact and a living piece of American history, embodying the legacy of Dwight Eisenhower, the triumph of Apollo 11, and the transformation of U.S. coinage in the modern era.